What's up, everybody? It's Wombat. I've been playing a lot of Blunderbuss Hammer recently, and the question has come up as to what are the best perks that you can be running for Hammer on your armor, on the hammer itself, and how are these perks going to change with the swing in meta from light and OPR to a lot of people running medium and a lot of heavy that we're seeing in OPR now. Which will most likely translate into the medium to heavy meta that's currently in Wars. So what I did here was I had my friend Ando come out and help me do some testing on a real person because the armor dummies do not have actual armor on them. So if you're trying to test something like penetrating wrecking ball, it doesn't do any more damage because there is no armor to penetrate. So what I did was I went through, created a testing program, then I ran through all the testing on Ando, and we got a bunch of numbers. So let's go take a look at those numbers, and we'll see what the best perks are to run on your armor, on your hammer, what are some of the issues with hammer right now, and what's the best hammer you can be running. So let's get into the numbers. Alright, so here we go. Again, I'm an old person and a nerd, so you're going to get all of my numbers in PowerPoint. This is going to be a lot of numbers, a lot of percentages. There are a lot of spreadsheets in the background. There were a lot of numbers, counting things up, averaging them out to get where we got to for this video. So, what are we trying to prove here? Is penetrating wrecking ball on your armor worth giving up a defensive perk? Is having it on your hammer better than having shockwave? Is penetrating wrecking ball more effective on heavier armor classes than it is on light? And then finally, what's the best hammer you can be running right now if you're trying to play BB hammer or perhaps hammer great axe or any other combination? So to do this testing, I went with 3 configurations as the attacker. The first was shockwave on the hammer only. That's going to be our baseline. Then we went to shockwave on the hammer with penetrating wrecking ball on the armor. And then we went to penetrating wrecking ball on the hammer with shockwave on the armor. I'm running full ignited rune glass in the armor. The weapons are ignited opals. I'm not doing any dodging, so we don't have to worry about the opal procs. And the defender setup is all light armor, no gems, no aversions, and relatively equal physical to elemental split. Now, why would I do no gems? Well, I don't want to skew the data. If you put in strike protection gems or fire resistance gems, obviously those are going to have a major impact on your numbers if you don't carry that all the way through. Also, the fact that there's no gems will let you make an educated decision when you watch this video and you see the damage numbers as to how you should gem yourself to protect from a hammer BB player. A big thing that a lot of people don't know is that grenades and a Zoth Blast are both 100% fire damage. That's why you'll see I'm running ignited gems and I have flame attunement on my weapons. So if you're really dying to blunderbusses, gemming against fire will help protect you because the Zoth Blast is like 6,000 damage whether you're in heavy or light armor. And heavy, we did all of the same as light gear. Now, I did roll a whole bunch of gear to 625 that is absolute garbage to do this testing. I blew like 50,000 umbral shards and invested some money in putting ignited gems into gear so that this would all work out and be equal. So do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and I will keep making videos like this if you guys like it. So just some notes on the perks, if you don't know. Sundering Shockwave on the hammer is a 14% rend for 10 seconds. Sundering Shockwave on armor is 9.8%. For those of you that don't do math, that is a 4.2% loss of rend when you're using it on armor. Wrecking Ball on your hammer is going to give you 33% armor pen. and Wrecking Ball on armor is going to give you 19%, so a 14% loss of armor pen. What the hell is armor penetration? Well, we'll find out here in a bit. So, the numbers for light armor testing. So, Shockwave Hammer plus Penetrating Wrecking Ball on armor, Penetrating Wrecking Ball on hammer plus Shockwave on armor. So, our Wrecking Balls were hitting for 915, 990, 1043. No surprise there, we put a perk on that makes Wrecking Ball do more damage. Shockwaves, no increase whatsoever. Again, no surprise, we're not doing anything that increases Shockwave. The light pellets were hitting for 540 per pellet on the first two, but only 519 on your Penetrating Wrecking Ball. This is due to the loss of rend percentage from Shockwave. Your attunement and gems are proccing, this is your total number for all of your attacks. They are a straight damage increase with Wrecking Ball. They do not care if you rend at all. Rends have zero impact on attunement procs or gem procs. So never think that you're going to get extra damage from doing a rend on these. And we'll look at Azoth Blast. It was doing on average about 6,200. And a total damage at the bottom here. You can see that the loss of rend damage on the Azoth Blast and on the light shot is not enough to make up the difference between how much damage you gain by using it on your hammer. So what's the takeaway here? So when you've got Penetrating Wrecking Ball on your hammer, you had a reduced light and Azoth Blast damage by 4.05%. It should be 4.2 according to the perks, and that's close enough to call accurate. That's rounding errors, that's little things in the game. With Amazon coding, that's really good. We'll call that equal. Again, there was a increase of 14% damage on your Wrecking Ball over just the Shockwave Hammer. So the perk says it should be 33% armor pen. So on light armor, 33% armor penetration equals 14% damage increase. It's kind of weird. And then when you had Penetrating Wrecking Ball on your armor, you had a damage increase of 8% on Wrecking Ball. So 8% damage increase equals 19% armor pen. I don't get it, right? But we'll come back to that later. Your total damage increase for Wrecking Ball with your attunements and gem procs ends up being, with it on your armor, it's a 6.82% increase or 119 damage. And when it's on your hammer, it's an 11.65% increase or 203 damage. Now you might be looking at these numbers and saying, you just said it was a 14 and 8% and it dropped to 11.65 and 6.82%. Why? Your attunement and your gems do not scale as much as the Wrecking Ball does. So while your Wrecking Ball goes up by 14%, the attunement and the gem procs created from your Wrecking Ball only go up by like 5%. So some weird scaling there in how they figure out their numbers, but just be aware that just because you're going up by 14% on your main attack, it does not mean that your gems and your attunement do the same thing, right? So let's look at over the entirety of the combo for Blunderbuss Hammer, right? So that's Wrecking Ball, Shockwave, Light, Azoth. What are our numbers? If you've got Hammer with Shockwave on the armor, you are down 174 damage. We're using Shockwave Hammer as the baseline, that's why it says 0. And Shockwave on your hammer plus penetrating on your armor adds 119 damage. That's not a surprise. We took our baseline and we added something that adds damage, right? So very expected numbers. As we stated earlier, the hammer penetrating Wrecking Ball It's coming in last due to the loss of 4.2% rend. So if you're not running BB Hammer, you can multiply your follow-up damage to Shockwave, whether that's a Maelstrom by 0.958. So that's going to be, gets rid of your 2%. It's 95.8% of your damage. And then add the 203 damage on, and you can see what your numbers are to see if it's going to be better or worse. Your Shockwave Hammer plus Penetrating Armor adds 119 damage from everything. So that's your Wrecking Ball, it's your Attunement, and your Gem procs. You get a total of 119 extra damage. So, is getting 7% extra damage or 6.82 extra damage on Wrecking Ball worth the Freedom or Shirking Fort? No, not in my opinion, it's not. It's a single attack for 119 damage on a total damage of 14,000 combo. Also, this is why you're getting smoked by BB Hammers, just for reference. This entire combo goes down in like a second and change, and you're eating 14,500 damage, so you're welcome. So 7% increase on Wrecking Ball, to me, it's not worth it. I haven't been running it because I just look at the numbers on light. When you're playing BB Hammer, you're mostly going after light armor players, and you're trying to one-shot combo them down. But with the meta change, if you want to stick with this build, you're going to have to look at some other numbers. So let's look at heavy armor testing now. So Wrecking Ball actually hits harder on heavier armor when you have the perks. Again, nothing impacts Shockwave, straight scaling on your attunements, but you'll notice that there's a significant damage increase on your Wrecking Ball when you add it to the hammer plus the Shockwave. Your Shockwaves are equal, your pellets are still decreasing, your Zoth is still decreasing, your gems and rune are all going up, and this total combo still does 12,000 damage or so. So what are we looking at here? So Penetrating Wrecking Ball on your hammer plus Shockwave armor has reduced light and Azoth blast damage by 4.5%. This should be 4.2 for the perks, but as we said earlier, Amazon coding, that's close enough for me. That's accurate. Penetrating Wrecking Ball on hammer had a damage increase of 34.5% on Wrecking Ball over the Shockwave hammer, which doesn't have any penetration. Now the perk says it's 33% armor pen. I'm going to take that as a rounding error and say that's right. Penetrating Wrecking Ball on the armor had a damage increase of 20%. Perk says it should be 19% armor pen. So this is interesting, right? Now we're seeing what armor pen is. When you are at maximum armor, armor penetration equals percent damage increase. So if you've got 19% armor pen and somebody's wearing heavy armor, you're going to do 19% extra damage to them. 33%, 33%. So armor penetration starts making sense when you look at it from a straight damage increase on heavy armor. Where it starts getting confusing is where you get into light armor and you're coming down armor classes and they don't explain what armor penetration means on people who have less armor. It's not a straight damage. It's still not you get 20% extra damage. Its effectiveness is being reduced by the lighter armor class, basically. So your total damage increase for Wrecking Ball with Attunement and Gem procs, you're looking at on your armor is 11.4% or 199 damage. On your hammer, it is 19.5% or 340 damage. And again, that is because your Attunement and Gems do not proc for the same percentage increase as your damage ability. So it's dragging down your overall percentage, but it's still adding damage. So now where are we looking at the same entire combo numbers? Well, Penetrating Wrecking Ball and the hammer closed the gap significantly. So if you're playing against a heavy armor player, there's really no difference at this point between having penhammer shockwave on your armor versus shockwave hammer. It's 38 damage. It's nothing, right? So these are very comparable skills now if you're against a heavy armor meta. Shockwave on your hammer plus pen on your armor adds 119 damage from everything. So let's go back. 199 damage. Your base damage is only 636 damage on Wrecking Ball, right? So you're 636 on Wrecking Ball, and we're getting an extra 199 damage from all sources, right? So this is a 31% increase on your Wrecking Ball damage when you're fighting heavy armor. So if I put this on my armor, I'm automatically doing 31% extra damage on my Wrecking Ball once my attunement procs and once I get my 3 ticks of my my gem proc. So all of a sudden, this is a no-brainer perk to take, right? Like, your primary skill you're using on the weapon gets boosted by 31%. Of course you're taking that skill. So is it worth taking this skill now, knowing that we're shifting to a heavy meta and Light's going to be getting phased out a little bit probably with all of the nerfs coming? Yeah, I think it is. It's a bad perk when you're fighting light armor. It just doesn't quite give you the value. But like when you're fighting that heavy, it's gonna be worth the extra damage. So I think absolutely take that penetrating wrecking ball, get it on a piece of armor, and sub out one of your other pieces. And then let's talk what is the Bis Hammer, right? Like knowing everything that we know now, attunement with elemental damage, ticking, rune glasses is required, right? Like that's going to be your max damage. I don't care if you're running opal. Like I run opal in mine so I can dodge and get the extra damage. Yes, it knocks the opal down to 12% damage instead of 15% damage, but the ticks that you get off of the rune glass are better than the 3% damage that you lose by having an opal in it. So, you're getting 8% damage ticks, which I've done the math on it. It's not 8% damage ticks 3 times. It's really about 16% damage over 3 ticks. But that's still a hell of a lot better than 3% damage. So you've got to use those elementals. Shockwave's required. You can't sub out penetrating wrecking ball if you're playing on the hammer, if you're playing, a normal OPR war where you expect to run into light armor. You're going to lose too much damage off of your follow-up strikes. If you're in a duel situation and you're playing somebody in heavy armor, sure, why not? And then the third perk is really debatable. And you're saying, no, it's not. Thwarting strikes is the no-brainer. You're a fucking idiot. And you're right. But Wrecking Ball does not currently work with thwarting strikes. Thwarting strikes is supposed to work on anything that has grit. Wrecking Ball and Shockwave both have grit. This is a perfect ability to use with Hammer, except it doesn't matter if you have grit from 300 strength. It doesn't matter if you have grit from the ability of Wrecking Ball. It just doesn't work. It's a known bug. It's been reported. It hasn't been fixed. So right now, thwarting strikes only affects Shockwave. So it's not great. It's an 11% damage boost on a 800 damage ability. Not great. So what about Rogue? Rogue would be awesome. Wrecking Ball hits for 14% increased damage. I know the perk says 19%. It's 14% if you actually test it. So just FYI. But Shockwave can't backstab, so it gets absolutely no boost. So while you see a lot of people running Rogue, again, it only affects one of your 2 abilities. which leaves people going more in this direction, where people are going for hammers with trenchant rend or counter, where, you know, counter is where you do extra damage to people who have grit. So if you're in a war and you're on a point and you're fighting other people who are 300 strength people with grit, both of your abilities will now do extra damage to the people who have grit versus and not require you to have grit. So you get the extra damage from counter. I run Trenchant Rend because it makes it much easier to kill those stubborn healers who are standing in their own circles and are impossible to kill. They get cocky. You go to wind up for a heavy, and they're just going to let you hit them with the hammer because they're going to save their dodges to get out of the Wrecking Ball Shockwave massive combo you do. When you have Trenchant Rend, it puts that big rend on them, and it lets you actually kill them and break through all the fortify. So, in my opinion, right now, the Biss Hammer is a attunement Shockwave Trenchant Rend. A lot of people will argue that it's counter. A lot of people will argue that it's rogue. A lot of people will argue that it's thwarting strikes. No one's really right at this point. They're all mediocre. Um, when they fix thwarting strikes, this will be the absolute best. There'll be no question. It's an 11% boost to both your abilities and any heavies. Like, it's absolutely the best. But this has been a problem for months and it hasn't been fixed. So, knowing Amazon, it'll probably be a year before this actually gets corrected. So, I hope you found this helpful. I know this is a long video. There's a lot of numbers. I put a lot of time into it. But I wanted to get you really just the numbers to go along with what people are telling you is right, so you can understand what to do yourself and make your own decisions. So again, thanks. If you like this video, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.